Hi everyone, I hope you're well, thanks for clicking on the video. Today we're doing a top 5 list of all the characters I wish had lived in the Walking Dead universe. This was actually much harder than I anticipated it being. There were so many characters that have died throughout the years, right? But this is the list of people that I feel like would have had the most impact had they had lived on. So hopefully we can agree on most of them. I'm sure we're going to disagree at some points, but let's start off at number 5, shall we? So at number 5 I have Jesus. He's actually a character that overall I think is pretty underwhelming considering his skill set and everything he has to offer for the group. Of course, what we got to see on the TV screen as him as a leader of the Hilltop was fantastic. Again, I think we could have seen more of him considering everything he has to offer. In the comic books, man, this guy is a badass, like a true martial artist. Of course, we saw that at times in the show. I think of his fight scene with Morgan. I think of him training Aaron, which is a relationship I really enjoyed. But man, in the comic book, Jesus is a badass, like a next level badass. And we really didn't get to see that in the TV show until the end when he died. And also, given his political skill set, I really think he would have been a true asset to the Hilltop during the Commonwealth arc. Of course, that's something we never got to see, but again, I really would have enjoyed that. If they had planned on killing Jesus in the Whisperer arc all along, I wish they would have at least saved his death for the Pike scene when they killed Henry and Tara and all these other characters, because it would have given his death so much more meaning. You know, the way he died, as it was shocking, but it just didn't have a lot of meaning. It felt worthless. Now, coming in at number 4, this might surprise a lot of people, right? But I have Dale. Dale has always been one of my favorite characters, right? The way he intertwined with the rest of the group, he really tried his best to bring everyone together and bring the best out of everyone. You could possibly argue that, yeah, perhaps he wasn't built to survive in a world like this, but he was someone who I really enjoyed on the screen every time, and I think his point of view, which was always so different from the rest of the group, would have been something that could have came in handy towards the later seasons. He had such an impact on Glenn's character, who's a character obviously I love and most people love. And also he was one of the few redeeming things about Andrea's character, right, is their relationship. So he really had a knack for bringing out the best in people, I would say. And now let's move on over to number 3. Now for me, having Herschel at number 3 just makes perfect sense. He was a character whose death was truly shocking, maybe top 3 most shocking deaths out of the whole universe of The Walking Dead. I couldn't believe it when his death happened. Herschel was someone who was always the voice of reason, right? He was someone who the leaders of the group would always look to for answers. He had such a strong moral compass that you could rely on him to have not just a great take, but the right take on a lot of the situations that were happening. And I think that impact that Herschel had on our characters was everlasting throughout the entire show, honestly, especially Rick. You know what I mean? A lot of what Herschel had taught him played on in his character. At number 2, we have Carl, and Carl is someone I could have easily had at number 1, honestly, right? He's someone who we've seen grow up in front of our eyes from the very beginning, from season 1, right? Of course, the character development in The Walking Dead is something we love most about the show, but I think Carl's character in particular had probably developed more than most, right? Of course, given that he was so young when we first saw him, but some of the trauma this kid went through, again, is more than most, right? Having to cut open his own mother and put her down, you know what I'm saying? Like, there are a handful of moments similar to that where that would just destroy most people, but for Carl, it really turned him into a strong character, and even at his young age, he was a real leader in the group, right? And his death was ultimately something that really changed Rick in a way that I'm not sure was for the better. Perhaps in a lot of ways it was the last straw that broke the camel's back in terms of Rick's character, but I think given the relationship that Carl had with Negan in particular, had he had lived on, he would have had a real impact moving forward. And I mean, in the comic book, he never died, right? He's probably the most significant character in the comic book. And to see that they had killed him off in the show was such a shock to everyone, because we know how important he is in the comic. With all that being said though, I am glad they handled his death with class. I like the way they did it. It was handled nicely. A character who I think deserves a special mention is Merle, right? Similar to Daryl, he's someone who has many layers to his character. On the top layer, he's kind of a douchebag, you know what I mean? He's not someone who perhaps at first glance you would want in your group, but he is someone who can do the dirty work, right? And I think given the opportunity, right, as we kind of saw towards the end of his time in The Walking Dead, he has a real likability to his character, if given the chance to open up And I can only imagine if he had lived on into later seasons, much like Daryl Dixon, he could have begun to become a real leader in the group. And his sense of humour is something while dark, it's something I always enjoyed. So yeah, I think he deserved a mention in the list, honestly. Now at number 1 is someone I think we all could have guessed, considering I haven't mentioned his name in the list yet. Glenn, for me, clearly stands at number 1, right? He's someone that we have all loved from the very first moment we saw him in season 1. He's someone who has like a real innocent naivety to his character, which makes him all the more likable, but also he's someone that is probably the most capable in the group. He can get in and out of dangerous spots quickly, he can gather resources without a problem, and he's someone who always makes it back to you in the end of the day, right? I believed Glenn to have died on multiple occasions throughout his time in The Walking Dead, right? Like some of the mucky situations he seemed to make it out alive from are just almost unbelievable. He's such a clutch character to have in your group, someone you would absolutely want around. Also, his relationship with Maggie, I would have loved to have seen him in that father figure role with his child, Herschel Jr., but it's something we never got, right? And his death was one of the most shocking. It's up there as the most shocking, potentially, in The Walking Dead, period. I certainly think his death is the saddest given the circumstances, right? Given how Maggie was pregnant and just how beloved he was by the whole Walking Dead universe. I think if he was like a top trump card, you know what I mean? I think his stats would be the most well-rounded out of all characters, honestly. He's politically sound. Like I said, he's more than capable of getting his hands dirty. He's likable. He can make the hard decisions. He's someone that you would absolutely want in your group, and I wish he could have made it to the final season of The Walking Dead. But it wasn't meant to be, unfortunately. For now, that brings us to the end of the video, guys. If you enjoyed, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel for more content just like this. If you have any thoughts and opinions on the video, perhaps you disagree with my list, please leave a comment down below and I'd love to get back to you when I have the time. Thanks, guys.